Netzach Nitzochem, because of existence versus existence, then what about a chait, an avera, a transgression? An avera has the koyach to take away Netzach Nitzochem and give you absolutely nothing. Because you're saying to punish you when you do a chait. At this moment in time, I take my existence for myself. I refuse to give you my existence. So the Rebbeinu Shem says, then I refuse to give you existence. You see? It's a balance. So from this we see the enormous power of a mitzvah and of a chet.
So it's a constant give and take.
Constant give and take. You see? When a mitzvah comes to your hand, or a chet comes to your hand, it will be extremely beneficial to realize this aspect. But it's not easy. You see? It's not easy. That's what it says, Imloi Achshav Emosai. If you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? Why? Because you are only in control of now. The Bechira only exists in the present. This moment is your control, you see. A couple of minutes from now, you're not in control of a couple of minutes from now. You may not be here a couple of minutes from now. Hence, you cannot, you can't be mocking something to Shalai Balaim. You can't give a gift of something which does not exist. You see? This is not futures or commodities here.
Yeah, but take a mitzvah. I mean, there is a mitzvah in Torah you should not steal, right?
Yeah.
So a person, how could you say that that's a mitzvah that you give your whole life up for it? I mean,
why? I'll tell you why.
So then you constantly kind that mitzvah.
Yes. Every loisa say that. Every second you don't do loisa say, you're makayim every loisa say. Definitely. Because it is. Stealing would acquire, you were able to acquire, there were many opportunities of stealing that would come to a person's ability that can enrich himself and enhance his life.
Don't kill somebody.
Whatever the story that he doesn't do it. Every second that he doesn't do that, every second that he does not do all the laws that say, he gets a mitzvah. Definitely.
That's human nature. You get a scar for it, but you don't. It's like eating insects.
No, because what it is, you see, what you're avoiding is because we're not thinking, the concept of the hierarchy. You see, what it is at any point in time, wherever a person is at a certain level, there are certain mitzvahs and averas which come to his hand and not, you see. Once he wins those averas, and what happens after a while, it becomes habitual not to do them.
Yeah, but Rebbeinu Shem in his chesed gives you a mitzvah for not doing it. I mean, but it's
no, but you see, that's not so. There's a point in time. You see, when there's a point in time when the avera of stealing, for example, comes to the consciousness of a possibility. But then what the person does, he ignores that in his curvature, and then after a while, it becomes part of his habit, personality. He doesn't go on stealing. Honesty becomes a trait or a character of the person. Now, that doesn't mean that he doesn't get scarred at that moment. What that means is that he simply worked up his personality or his needs to such extent where he doesn't do that kind of thing.
But he still gets a mitzvah.
But he still gets, because he has to work at one point, you see, and he has to, but he's now working for higher levels.
So you always have at least that mitzvah.
Yes. No, you always have that, because you put in a void at that point in time for that mitzvah or for those things, and you were clean of that. That was.
So according to you, everybody should be zeicha to Olam Haba.
What?
Because there's a person who always bound to hit something.
Yes, well, the Rameir says, even the B'choite Yisrael of the Olam Haba, because every Yid has many mitzvahs like Karimoyin. Every Yid has mice and Torah Karimoyin. Any Jew that you find, most Jews you find, they have many mitzvahs. Yes, that's right.
If it's a one-to-one relationship.
Yes, that's right. That's why most Yid will have Olam Haba, for that reason. Because there's a one-to-one, and every Yid has certain amount of mitzvahs in some way.
Yeah.
Yes. That's why the only ones who are not Zech to Olam Haba are Moedik Rishoyim, who will get into a second. Maybe other people will get into a second. Those are the ones who lose it because of the incredible devastation. We'll get into that in a second in terms of that.
The bleacher seats we filled completely. But how many people we have the front row center? No different.
What's that? You like the thought?
Yeah.
You don't think of it in those terms.
The thought is okay, but
because you think of it in these terms. Most people don't think of it in these terms. But that's the enormous power of a mitzvah. You know? The Kenyan ability of a mitzvah has enormous power. But people are not accustomed to think in those terms. Yeah.
Well, there is a teaching I heard about like a mitzvah creates many angels
Yes. Yeah,
the Ketrugim.
Ketugim, the angels that create essentially the Oris or the Ketugim. Well, a mitzvah creates Oris, but it creates what's called angels who defending eternities and so. It creates a mitzvah creates a higher status, an awe. You see?
Not actual angels.
Yes.
But they also create that. But fundamentally, what a mitzvah creates, what we spoke about, a mitzvah creates a certain awe. An awe is brought down, where the neshama becomes much more powerful. That's what a mitzvah really does.
No, this
See,
level of
and
being.
a chait creates a pagam, or klipa, a tumah, that comes on the neshama from the other side, you see. But also, as a person does the mitzvah and the awe comes down, a malach is created which represents that awe which came down. So in the Bezin Shemaila, he tines that awe because he emanates from that awe, you see.
The whole koyach is in that awe.
Yeah, right. Malachim are created from the oris and the klippas that's how they come right out of it, and so on. And they simply represent because they are the consequence of the aura itself.
Maybe they are on that level. Maybe it goes to Mishalshis. Maybe on that level that is the aura. When it goes to Bria.
That's going to go on Yeshua. That's why. Yeah.
Maybe it's like that.
Yeah. This then is the power of a mitzvah and the power of a chet. Okay. We see therefore from the power of a chet that if a person does a chet, then what happens the second that he does a chet, you see, at the present time that he's doing the chet, he has disturbed his entire existence. See, this is the thing, as we explained once before. Everybody exists from moment to moment. If you look at a person's life is like infinite number of sections. You know what I mean? Cross sections, in a sense. And every person goes from 1 minute to the next. You see? And at any point in time, only 1 minute in his life exists. Right now, the present state is all that we have. This present state is all reality itself. When you do a chet, what you fundamentally have done is that you've taken your actual reality and you've been destructive with it. You see, that's the enormous power of it. By doing a chet means, what do you mean? It's not doing one chet among many chatoim. You see? It's much greater power there. It's not thrown into the bin of more chatoim. You know, it's like you do a mitzvah, you throw into the bin of more mitzvahs. You do a chet, you throw into the bin of more chatoim. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying? That's not the way it goes. It's not an additive thing where you're adding up like in a bank account with deposits and withdrawals. That's not what it is. Why? Because since a person lives only from moment to moment, his existence is from moment to moment. The existence in which he's living at that point in time is his total existence. And it is also the total existence of all reality. You see? Which means that when a person does a mitzvah at that moment, you see, then he consecrates his entire existence. You see, suddenly he infuses all existence with a kedusha. And when he does a chet, he infuses his entire existence with a tumah or chet. You see? But it's a much more powerful dimension that's being affected.
That's what they say. If a person he makes a bracha just before he's nifter, that's a big schusla.
Yeah, it could be that could be matzah, and tshuva before could be matzah. Why should tshuva before? Because the point is, a person, because he left this before he left his life, he devoted one total existence to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You see, one pure achas. You could be kohen your 1 hour. He was able to be kohen his own. Why? Because that 1 hour was equivalent to a certain status of total existence itself. You see, and that's kohen a tremendous amount. That's the power of the thing. It's important to see it this way. You all understand this concept. It's not additive, but rather it's segmented. Each second is total existence itself. Each moment in time is its own eternity. To be more poetic, is its own eternity. Every moment in a person's life is an eternity itself. It constitutes an entire existence, because that's all that there is. So what you do with the eternity, life is nothing more than a sequence of eternities. To be a little more again, it's a sequence of eternities. That's fundamentally what it is. So what you do with each eternity has a great deal to do with what eternity itself will look like in the end. But that's really what it is. Each person lives from one eternity to the next. So every time he does a chet, he's doing it in an eternity. Every time he does a mitzvah, he's doing it in an eternity. You see. So it has that enormous power. So if it has that enormous power, when the Buddha wants to take away the pagam of a chet, he has to apply very powerful forces to remove it. Since the power of the chet is so vast. You see. This is the problem. Yeah.
Well, whatever you did until now has a great effect on what's going to happen, what the situation now is.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it would be much more difficult to achieve something now until now.
Yes. Yes.
It's been destroyed.
In a sense, because what you do is, right, each second, each point, each time, each moment of time constitutes an eternity for the person.
Yeah, but
see.
There's only one eternity. You cannot. Eternity is one.
But the thing is, the life is composed of a sequence of eternities. Okay. So each eternity is fundamentally determined. The nature of each eternity is fundamentally determined by all the eternities before. You see.
But Olam
strange concept.
In Olam Haba, there's no such a thing as eternity.
No, it's different, right?
You know,
in Olam Haba, right.
So no matter how big a Russia person was, till now, if he did one mitzvah according to you, you know, he was kind of himself his new eternity.
He could be. It depends on the nature of the mitzvah. If you see that point, it's not so simple because it depends on a lot of things.
If he did mitzvahs and that's it.
I mean, if he did one total,
he did one total mitzvah.
What happens to all the other times before that?
According to this
what happens to it, Buzz?
No, I don't know. According to this
it's not so pashut. Why is it not? Why is it not so pashut? Because you have to understand, each moment in life is an eternity. However, what you have to understand is this, that each moment in life that a person has, at that point, is a conglomeration of all the previous eternities. So in other words, even though he gives up, you see, even though he says, right now, this is all I have, you see, and I give everything up, but the question is, what is the quality of the eternity at this point? It may be so suffused with destructive force already.
We are not dealing in a basket theory. You said it's not, it's not a shopping bag.
You mean in terms of additive? Yeah. But you see, the problem is the fact that he's done. There's another. The question is also in terms of what he's done in the past. You see, a person could do. You see, the question comes in here in terms of there's two aspects here, and that's the thing. Each moment in time is an ability for kinyan to acquire eternity, but each moment of time also has a denial of kinyan, but it also has the union of hefsid. You can lose. Now, the question is this. If a person does a chet in that moment of time, which is the eternity at that point in time, he does a chet, then he's mafsid an eternity. He's mafsid. Now, he goes on to the next moment of time, and he does a mitzvah. You see, now, he acquires eternity. But what happened to the hefsid of eternity before? It's not,
it depends what's the last.
What?
It depends what the last.
No, it's not so pashut. Because the mitzvah din says, you see, that he was already mafsid his eternity. It's not so simple. See, the mitzvah din says, once he's mafsid, like other mission, if one other mission did the chet, the mitzvah din said, you cannot allow him to go on anymore. Because he was mafsid his eternity. So in order for him to be able to go on, the Buddha had to develop a mechanism which, with the Hanagat Yichud, develop a mechanism which, in other words, which is able to remove that hefset of the previous eternity in the next eternity. Or else the mitzvah din will be able to say, he has no right to this new eternity. You see what I'm saying? That's the whole problem here. Yes, the problem is this. If the person starts out and never did a chet, then the moment that he has now, he can acquire eternity. What happens if he does a chet? That he's mastered this eternity. Then the mitzvah din will not let him go on. You see? It's got to stop here. So the Buddha says, let's go on. Let him go on. But let him go on and acquire another eternity, but he's still got to deal with the old eternity to remove the din. Or else the din says, you have no right to a new eternity. You have no right to a new moment. It undermines the very possibility of a new moment. So therefore, what happens is each new moment, therefore, is not only an opportunity to be kind of a new eternity, but it serves as an opportunity to remove all the hefsedim of the old eternities that have to be removed. Because if you don't remove all those hefsedim before, then the mitzvah din says, I don't care what he does up front. He had no right to go up front. He had no right to go ahead in time. Because he's already lost everything that he should have had. He's lost his entire existence already. You see my point?
So we are adding.
What?
So you are adding.
In the end, the distance is this. That since in the end he still has to keep on going and dealing with the hefset, he still has to deal with the hefset. In the end, what happens is his ability to acquire eternity becomes less and less. Why? Why does it become less and less? Because he has less and less bechira. In order to make this eternity, the person has a certain moment in time. For example, let me tell you that. Adam Rishon before the Chet. Or let's say a person, he has a moment in time, he's never done a Chet before, right? In this moment in time, he can either do a mitzvah or an avera. Correct? He has 100% bechira to do either one or the other. If he does a mitzvah, he requires eternity. He can. If he does a Chet, he's lost eternity. So the din says, can't go on. The Yichud says, let him go on to the next. Fine. He goes on to the next. Now, in the next one, he again has that chance. However, because of the fact that he really didn't belong in the next moment, you see, he's got to devote part of this new moment, the second moment, in erasing the damage of the first. So he no longer, that is manifest in the fact that he no longer has full bechira. You see what I'm saying? So therefore he only has 90% bechira. You see, what 90% bechira means that he doesn't have the full capacity to use this next moment to acquire full eternity really. He can't give of himself entirely. If he keeps on going, eventually he can get down so that the moments of his life are such that he's got like 1% bechira. You see, 99% of each moment is now concerned with just keeping him alive, keeping him in that new moment. And erasing all the old moments.
What do you mean as a bechira? Because he's concerned with regaining, but he's erasing the
old and gaining new.
So he's overly concerned with that, you mean?
Yeah. What's that?
It counts for nothing.
That comes the problem. There comes a point in time. This is the problem. See, this is what happens with Rishonim. Rishonim who devote their entire lives to Chatoim damage so many moments, you see, where the din is so strong that any moments that they're allowed to live after that no longer could be answered from the Midas HaDin. The Midas HaDin cannot. The Midas HaDin is so strong. The Midas HaDin is so strong that the truth of the matter is the person really cannot go on living. Like it says, Rishonim Gemurim, why do we need them Lemisa? Mitzad HaDin. Now, if they do go on living, why do they go on living? They go on living in a situation where there is no longer any bechira. You see, they may go on living in a situation where they get their rewards, whatever good deeds they had or whatever, they get the rewards then. But the point is that the new moments that they keep on going are no longer moments where they're really acquiring anything in any sense.
You're dividing eternity into pieces.
Yes. In a sense, because I'm dividing bechira into pieces.
Yeah, bechira we can understand the pieces, but eternity, how can you divide eternity?
Because the effect or the power of eternity depends on your bechira in the situation. The reason why each moment is eternity, you see, but the ability to use that eternity to be kind of another eternity depends on your bechira.
Yeah, but let's say Mashiach comes right now, and the guy has fulfilled 3/5 of his. So he bought 3/5 of eternity.
What's that?
I mean, a guy did 20 mitzvahs, 20 nevaris before, and he's on the 80th mitzvah.
He's bought full eternity, but he's bought full eternity, but at a much lower level of existence. In other words,
now you're coming back to Vezichuch. What type of Vezichuch?
That's right. We're coming back to the concept that Olam Haba itself is graded, different level.
Right.
In other words, as soon as he does a mitzvah, that's the other angle. Okay, what you're saying, there's two angles here. The two angles is a person's life is constructed of a sequence of moments. Each moment allowing him to coin eternity or not. Okay. Now, as he goes on and on, it is possible that each moment is, let's say, has less and less bechira. You see this line differentiates, you know what I mean? When there's less and less bechira. So, in order for that moment to be valuable, he has to have as much bechira as possible. The less bechira there is in each moment of time, the less able he's able to use this time to be kind of eternity. That's one problem. The second problem is the nature of eternity itself. When a person acquires eternity, all it means is that he acquires eternity. You see, since you gave up your existence, the Rebbeinu gives you existence. But what about the quality of that existence? You see, that's the second thing which comes in. Where will it fit you in Olam Haba? It's true, because you gave up your existence, you see, since you gave up your existence, we'll give you existence.
All he bought is time. He's buying time. In that sense.
One mitzvah is buying time, he's buying eternity, but not the quality. The quality of eternity is depending on how many eternities you gave up.
Luxury.
You see, how many eternities did you give up? You see, how many of your moments, where each one was an eternity, did you give up? That determines the quality. So, we can formulate that basic principle. one mitzvah is enough, assuming that there's bechira. If there's full bechira, for example, in a specific moment in time, a mitzvah is enough to acquire all of Olam Haba in terms of being in Olam Haba. You see, in that sense. But where you are in Olam Haba, in terms of your position or your madrega, depends on the quality of that eternity, and that depends also on how many eternities you gave up, or with what Mesiris Nefesh you gave up eternity.
Right.
You see, how much the Shema,
Actually,
how much Shalom Shema, all these factors are included. You see, so all these things are taken into account.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I think that makes it clearer. But, okay.
The quality is determined by the amount of tikkun of the
Yeah, what?
A person does Averis, and the clear gets less and less and less, right?
If he does,
He
yeah.
has 0.03% less.
Yeah, whatever
right?
it is, yeah.
Now this guy does a mitzvah, and I've heard it said many times that a person who's a Russia is so far, if he moves a little bit, Hashem meets him more than halfway,
If he does a
right?
very powerful mitzvah, yeah.
That's a very powerful mitzvah.
Either has to, it sounds so little. No, sometimes what? No, sometimes if a Rosh, if the person is a very big Russia, and he comes to a situation and he does a mitzvah, even though he doesn't have much bechir in that sense, but suddenly he jumps up and he does the mitzvah to a profound degree.
How does he do that?
What? He has a certain amount of bechira, right? And he uses the bechira to do the mitzvah, but he does the mitzvah with a tremendous hidur. You see?
How can he do that? It doesn't count for anything.
Who? No. Well, I'm not talking about the Russia who doesn't have any bechira at all anymore.
But the way he's getting there.
Who?
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about an individual, let's say for example, but sometimes whatever bechira he has left, now you can take that bechira and exhaust the possibilities of that bechira to a very high level, whatever he has left. If he does that,
you have many mitzvahs that it's different period. If you do one mitzvah, it's like if you kill a mekayim kol Torah.
There's other mitzvahs, but there are certain mitzvahs, for example, if he saves someone's life, there are certain mitzvahs which are qualitatively more powerful than others. You see, let's say he saves somebody's life. Saving a person's life is a very, very powerful mitzvah. If you save one person's life, it's like you save the entire world, you see. So in that sense, even though it was one mitzvah, and he didn't have much bechir, let's say that guy's sense, but it was enough bechir, he saved the guy's life, he did one mitzvah which had very profound implications. That can do a tremendous amount to restore him to a larger level. What?
He raised a lot of his previous lost
so Levi moved it, and therefore he was zeichud to a much higher level of Olam Haba by the fact that he did a more profound mitzvah. Or let's say, for example, he did a mitzvah, he had certain bechir to do a mitzvah. You see, let's say someone came over and wanted some tzedakah. You know, for example, somebody came over to him and said, a permanent came over to the guy and says, look, I'm going on for Achnos and Kala. I have no money, I can't make a wedding, I can't do anything. Could you give me a donation, for example? So, this is a legitimate case, so the guy's a bad person. But, for that moment he says, okay, I'll give the guy. He pulls out a $5 bill. He says, okay, here's a $5 bill. You see? Okay. Now, what happens if he pulls out and says, look, I understand your situation, I don't want to give you $1,000 to make you a wedding. You see, it was the same bechira to help a person in terms of achnas kala, the same mitzvah. You know what I mean? But in one case he gave a $5 bill. In another case he pulled out. For some reason this guy went ahead with tremendous Mesiris Nefesh to do this mitzvah. You see, so what happens is he took the same mitzvah and he expanded on it in terms of its Mesiris Nefesh, in terms of its depth to a much higher degree. Well, that has a very strong power, a much greater power. Even though the bechira may have been small, but the amount of Mesiris Nefesh that was done in that may be very great.
Why was the bechira small in that case?
What?
If he's in Russia. You mean the bechira small, Latzana Tov?
Yeah, sometimes.
But what happens to all of the verses?
So that should make it better.
His whole life he did all
From
of
Sarah
They
Amber.
don't go away. They don't go away.
Well, what's going on with this guy?
But that one mitzvah may have put him into a certain position of Olam Haba, may have gotten him over the fence to some extent. We had some kind of claim in Olam Haba, even though maybe a small one. What? He has a small. It got him over the fence to claim a certain chelik in Olam Haba, but it may be a small one.
So what are the things that are varying in? The type of mitzvah, the amount of strength it has.
Okay, what essentially varies, the power of the moment is the same for all. What varies is what? It's first of all several things. It's the amount of bechira,
Right.
the type of mitzvah, right? And the input in the mitzvah, the amount of Mesiris Nefesh for the mitzvah. You see, those are the three things that will vary.
type of mitzvah is objective, and the input is subjective. Mesiras Nefesh.
You see, Mesiras Nefesh.
The Shtadlus, the
and the Bechira is objective. It's all, but
it's also
the amount of Bechira, first of all, that he has, the kind of mitzvah that's coming to his hand, and the amount of that he exercises that Bechira. To what degree he goes ahead and is Mekayim that mitzvah. You know what I mean?
And what changes? Is the amount of Bechira changes with his past performance?
What happens is it's possible sometimes, it's possible sometimes where this mitzvah is so powerful in that kind of sense that the guy enters into a new parsha, a whole new parsha.
Why would this mitzvah come to him? What does it mean that he has less Bechira? It means that he's done so bad that we're going to take away all his power, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to give him the chance to
well, but that's sometimes the mitzvah comes to him. No. Sometimes the mitzvah comes to him because the Bereshit Shemai gives him another opportunity. He's giving him another chance in that sense. So he doesn't change the Bechira of the person in that sense. But he's giving him a very powerful mitzvah. He's saying, look, I'm giving you a one-shot deal over here. Yeah. You know, if you grab it, you can do a tremendous amount. If you lose it, then you can lose a tremendous amount.
But does it really cost a lot from him? You know what I'm saying?
What? Yeah, it does, because he doesn't have that much Bechira. And so it's less Bechira, and he's got a tremendous weight of Bechira. You know, what
covers that? What do you mean by that?
No, I'm not kidding. One second. I don't want... Look, 1 second. This entire issue here of Bechira, the specific mitzvahs, all these things, is really a different discussion. It really is in a certain sense. And the truth is, I don't want to... All we're doing is, we're trying to develop a certain basic concept here about the value of each moment in time, and therefore, the consequential value of each mitzvah of chet in that moment of time. Now, there are a lot of other complicating factors. There's complicating factors about all the past life that he had. There's a complicating factor of the amount of bechira that he has at this point in time. There's a complicating factor of the types of mitzvahs that come to his hand, and other chasodim and dinim that come down on him. You see. To go into that would be going to a whole scenario about Yisurin and all kinds of other things. Because many times when a person does a mitzvah, suddenly he finds that his life gets much worse. You see. Sometimes many times a person becomes a Baal Tshuva. There are a lot of Baal Tshuvas, they become a Baal Tshuva and suddenly their life goes to pieces. You know, before they were Baal Tshuva, everything was going hunky-dory. Suddenly they became fum and everything becomes miserable. And he can't be matzliach and everything is very bad. Which is strange. You see. Because the answer is sometimes when a person does tshuva, what happens is the person now becomes a new zeicha to a new parsha of tikkun, which means that even the Yisurin is now a new parsha of tikkun. And even though he thinks that his life is going bad, it's really going better. You see, there's a lot of cheshbonis here which I don't want to go into. That would be the topic of a whole shir itself about basically the relationship of the person in mitzvahs and the mitzvahs hadin, the shikl of mitzvahs hadin and yichud that applies and so on in each individual. The fundamental idea that I simply want to say over here is the power of the moment and the power of a chet mitzvah in terms of its ability to acquire eternity or to lose eternity. That's essentially the central idea, you see. Now, let's go on. We'll take a 5-minute break. Let's go back to the original question, okay? We begin now to see the effect of a chet, the power of a chet. That's why this entire Hakdama was necessary. You see, to find out what the power of a chet is and so on. What specifically is the chet that kept us in Gola so long and really wreaks havoc with Klal Yisrael? Fundamentally, what the Torah really says, and you see this all over the place, is the following: that the chatoim that are very difficult to handle and deal with, that the Rebbeinu Shem finds it very difficult to exonerate or deal with, are the chatoim that involve the mitzvahs of bein adam la'adam. You see, there are two categories of mitzvahs. You can divide them. Those categories of what's called bein adam la'makom, those mitzvahs that relate to the Rebbeinu Shem, like tzitzis and tefillin, and Zuzah, and Shabbos, and Chometz, and Pesach, and Yantav, and Shabbos. All of these mitzvahs have to do with mitzvahs bein adam l'makom. You see, between man and God, as they say. But then there's a whole group of mitzvahs between man and man, like Gzela, Ritzicha. Many mitzvahs that have to do with man and man, and so on. The things which incite the Rebbeinu Shem, the din, to a very powerful degree, are the mitzvahs bein adam la'adam. And they're extremely destructive. Why? Why are they so destructive? If you do a chet between Adam and Makom, you see, what is it? Fundamentally, the effect of that mitzvah is a pagam on your neshama. You see, it's a pagam on your neshama. You've affected yourself in a certain way. But if you do something to affect another person, you've not only affected your own neshama, but you've affected somebody else, and therefore you've affected somebody else's avodah in the bria. You see, since the entire world, the whole universe, or the entire bria, what do you call it, needs all of Klal Yisrael to do the job. The tikkun HaKlal, the tikkun of the bria, must be established to all the Yidden. You see, every Jew has a specific aspect in that tikkun. Kol Yisrael are Raven Zelazeh, meaning all Jews are connected to each other. What way? They are Raven Zelazeh because fundamentally the tachlis that every Jew must do is the tachlis of Klal Yisrael itself. Am Yisrael. The one who took over the tachlis of Adam Rishon was not one Jew or 4 Jews or 8 Jews. It's all Jews. What used to be the tachlis of one man now became the tachlis of all the Jews. All Jews therefore took over the tachlis of Adam Rishon in the sense that it was fragmented and a piece was given to every Jew. You see, to do a chet, connect the Vanisham is one thing. It's to interfere with your tikkun, the tikkun that you're supposed to establish by yourself. But to do a chet against another person is to interfere with his tachlis as well. Hence, it comes to a much wider gather. That's number one. The second concept, you see, is the fact that if you do a chet against the Banisham can then say, according to the Makatri, the Sultan, okay, I'm moichel the person. But if he does a chet to somebody else, the Banisham says, I can't be moichel for somebody else. I can't. You see, I can't undo the damage that he's done to somebody else. He didn't do it, you know, in that kind of sense. So for that reason, the kittut against Averis that have been Adam LaAdam are much more powerful than they are Ben Adam LaMakom. It's the most damaging of all the chatoim. You see, Ben Adam LaAdam. There are many mitzvahs Ben Adam LaAdam. You see.
There's still a third reason.
What?
Because Masniyah, the ego, Ben Adam LaMakom is easier. But to the agency of Ben Chaver, it's harder. It's hard to say Yesh Ein Avavaro.
Yeah, but that's the yes, but I don't want to examine too closely here. Right. I want to examine it from a different.
Third thing.
Yeah, that's a good examination from another standpoint. But I want to examine the difference between Ben Adam LaAdam, Ben Adam LaMakom in terms of this. There are many mitzvahs Ben Adam LaAdam. You see, the important mitzvahs, for example, Gneva, Gzela, Ritzicha, adultery. All these things have to do with Ben Adam LaAdam. You see. But there are certain things that have to do with Adam LaAdam that are extremely, the word is pernicious, or very destructive, you see. And these mitzvahs are fundamentally, that have to do with the whole Indian, for example, of the relationship that one person has to another in terms of sinner, you see. People have certain drives. They have drives for self-esteem, they have drives for power, drives for gaiva, for recognition, and drives for monetary possessions, all these things. What all these types basically do to a person is they put him in competition with everybody else. That's fundamentally what it is. Every person is in competition with everyone else in terms of who's on top in a certain way. What a person therefore develops is a sinner or a hate for someone else. Why? Because what people fundamentally see is, look, my gedula or my success in many ways is totally on a lot of other people's downfall. That's the way the world works, you see. So because of that thing, the sinner begins to develop. When you begin to see other people in competition for what you need to survive and to survive well, the other people become, in a way, your enemies. You begin to hate them, you see. When you begin to hate other people, it becomes very bad. Why? Because certain things begin to ensue from a person that come out of the hate. You see, you won't go over to other people and kill them. You will not go over them and rob from them. You see, but you will go over and start talking about them. You'll start talking about lashon hara and rechidus and motzi shema. You'll start getting into this field. You see, now that is extremely destructive. Lashon hara and all the things that come out of a person because of the sinner that he has to another person is very, very destructive. Why is it destructive? I'll tell you why it's destructive. Because what happens is, let's say you have a certain individual, and you go around and you start talking to different people, certain lashon hara about another guy, and these people begin to spread the story and so on. What happens is, certain very great takalos can come out, such that if it gets around in a certain way, this person's reputation can be severely damaged. You see, if his reputation is severely damaged, there are other consequences that can ensue. He can lose chas v'shalom his business. His marriage can break up. All kinds of things can happen. Now, let's say, for example, a person says a piece of lashon hara, a real choice piece of lashon hara, right, and spreads it around, and what happens is this person's marriage is affected. You see, and the person, because of this, loses the marriage, his parnasa, all kinds of stuff. Now, we look at this person himself. What happened to this person? You see, what's happened is tantamount to Ritzicha. You've killed this person. You see, but it's worse than Ritzicha. Why? Because when you kill the person you want, you go over and you end his life, and that's the end of it. You see, but if your ma'asim, your lashon hara, for example, cause this person tremendous losses, he feels this every second of his life. You see, what you have successfully done is to put this man in an agonizing state every second of his life, in a state of agony. You see, now, what's the sheer of that agony? That sheer is tremendous. If your ma'asim determined, you see, 10 years of agony for this guy, add up 10 years of agony. You know what that comes out to? That is staggering. You see, what? That is staggering, because not only does that destroy his ability to do his own tachlis, you see, but you've taken a person and you've put him into a living hell. You've killed him moment by moment by moment, you see. Like it says, cowards die many times before their death. An old Shakespeare statement. But the brave, the valiant die only once, you see. In a sense, that's a similar kind of thing. That a person who's in a state of agony is in a constant state of death. Every second he goes to a misa. Like it says, if you embarrass someone in public, kilu hoga. If you say so, when someone is standing there, and you embarrass him, and suddenly becomes the laughing stock of an olam, his face turns red, you see, and he feels like a knife. It's the same pain as a knife would have gone in, except that he goes on living, you see. If you destroy a person's reputation, or you destroy his life, your ma'am is constantly. You see, he is in a continuous state of being a nirtzach. Now, combine now these two aspects. Combine the quality or the intensity of what one chet should do to you because of the pagam, and combine the fact that this chet is multiplied over and over to intense degrees. Can you imagine what's going to come on your head? You see what I'm saying? The problem, and this is the critical problem with Jews, that no matter how from they are, and I say this not to be malshin on Klal Yisrael, but fundamentally to explain what the Chazal has said and what the Nevi'im have constantly shried on Klal Yisrael, so that it's possible that we should take it into account. You see, is that when a person has a sinner for another person, and he begins to delve into all those little mechanisms that are involved in sinner, you see what? Lashon hara, lying about another person, these things, embarrassing other people, cheating him, treating him contemptuously, all these little things that a person does on a daily basis that he's not even recognizing, have the effect of like putting knives into another person in many, many different ways. You see, the sum total of all these chatoim is such that when they begin to amass, you see, the Einish is incredible. What Klal Yisrael has continuously done, no matter how firm they are, they constantly undermine the respect, you see, and the relationship that they always have among each other. This has been the most fundamental kilkel that Klal Yisrael has always had. And it's a thing that the Satan runs up and says, aha, I don't care what this guy learns, I don't care how many mitzvahs he does, look at this guy, look what he's done to that guy, look at this guy, he's a behemoth. That's what he is. I don't care that he puts on tefillin every day, in that sense. So he does all these things and so on. But look, my God, look at what this guy's mouth has done. You see, look at the stuff that's come out of this guy's mouth. Look at this guy, the gaiva of this guy. There are many Jews who suffer from this disease called gaiva. You know what gaiva does? Gaiva is an incredible thing, because Gaiva is a contemptuous thing that sees other people in contempt, and so on. And every time he's contemptuous with the sinner combined, he'll downgrade somebody else, or he'll speak Lashon Hara, or he won't hesitate to cheat someone, you see, and hurt all kinds of things. The total of the Gaiva and the sinner that comes together is far greater than whatever taiva this guy has. You see, the Yitzhak will say, look, this guy's about taiva. Okay, he's about taiva. If he's about taiva, he only damages himself. But if he's about Gaiva, if he's about sinner, then the stuff that will begin to come out of this guy is very destructive. So the Yitzhak runs up and says, I don't care what this guy's learnt, and I don't care how many mitzvahs this guy's done. Look at all the dead bodies that are strewn all over the place because of what this guy has, and so on. What can the Banishim say? What can he say? The Banishim is silent fundamentally. Why? Because he can say, I can be meichel the guy against me, but I can't be meichel all these dead bodies all these people that he's destroyed. You see what I'm saying? I can't do that. So the Yitzhak has a tremendous kitvuk, you see. And since the fact that Bein Adam LaAdam has so much shaykhah to destruction, the dinim that come on Klal Yisrael have to do with destruction. They have to do with tzicha. And that's where Esav gets his enormous shlita. You see, it says that the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of sinah chinam, fundamentally. The sinah that Jews had for each other. But it's not a sinah. Sinah itself lies in the heart of a person. You see, it's the manifestations of sinah. It's the expression of sinah through all the different destructive things that a person can do to another person that is evoked because of the sinah. And it becomes so automatic that a person is not even aware of it. You see, he doesn't even know all the stuff that's going on around him as he goes through his life, you see, and he deals with other people in this eifan. You see, I mean, we all see the reputation of frum Jews. Like how many times a fly person says, well look, you don't have to be frum as long as you're a mensch, and so on. Like, the reputation is that frum people are always involved in genevas, and all kinds of, handlerei, and all kinds of, stuff like that. You see, it's a terrible thought that in terms of the reputation that frum people have had in this kind of way, you see. But it's this kind of thing which is marach the golus to such a large extent. And none of that, it's this kind of thing because of the fact that it's so destructive. When it brings the kapora, when the punishment has to save these people for what? For Elam Haba, then he's got to bring the retzicha on them in a very powerful degree. Why? Because their meisim of Bein Adam had the qualities of a retzicha. You see? What? Mida connected Mida. There was something called, a long time ago, called the Doa Flugga. What this is, the people, after the time of Adam Rishon, by the after time of Noach, a lot of people got together and they said, let's build a tower and we'll war against God. You see, that's called the Tower of Babel, the Doa Flugga. So what the Banishim did was, he confused their languages so they couldn't build a tower. That's what he did. Why did the Banishim kill them or destroy them, bring a Magef or plague on them?
Because there was a Hava between them.
Well, yes, because there was a strange quality they all had. All the people got along very well. They got along very well, and there was a certain ischabus among them. There was a certain ava that existed among all the people at that time. So the point is, once there's an ava, even though they're fighting against God, that's a direct war between the people against God, you see. Bein Adam LaMakom, they were shocked. But since Bein Adam LaAdam, there was this ava, the Banishim was powerless mitzvah din to affect anything, and he didn't want to. Because the din could not come on and say, let's kill them, destroy them. Because there's no inyan with tzicha, you see. So all the Banishim did was to confuse their languages and bring a bigger hest into the world. That's all. But he did not kill them in any way. Because there was no hashchasa, Bein Adam LaAdam. You see what I'm saying? The reason why the door of Noach, the door of Mabul was destroyed, because of the Chomas and the Gzela. Gzela, that's what Rashi says, Gzela and Chomas, because of the robbery. These things represent, once you see Gzela and all these things, that means that the very fabric of society is deteriorated. It means that there's no trust between men. There's no trust, there's no respect, and there's no ava, there's no love anymore between men. That means when there's no ava, these things, that means there's nothing more than hashchosa between them. There's nothing more than constant retzichas going on. Not only physical, but psychological retzichas, and spiritual retzichas, you see. Once that's done, then the mitzvah din comes up and says, retzicha is a din. So suddenly the entire world is destroyed from the Doa Mabul. But the Doa Flug escaped that. So we see the importance, the incredible, effects, the harmful effects of Bein Adam LaAdam. that a ben adam odum hashchosa can mamish bring with sichas connected a person. You see what I'm saying? Much more powerful. Where else do you see this? Moshe Rabbeinu, there's a mitzvah over there in the Chumash when Moshe Rabbeinu remember he saw Das and Avim fighting, and one of them lifted his hand to hit the other. So Moshe said, "Lo mosaker tzriacha." You see. So the other one said. So one of the guys said, I forget which one. That's over here. He said to Moshe, he says, "Oh, who made you a prince among us to begin to judge us? Are you going to judge us like you killed the Mitzri over there?" So Moshe Rabbeinu said, "The plastic ochen noida hadava." You see. So Rashi learns out two pshatim over there. Ochen noida means, now the thing is known. Rashi says there are two pshatim on that thing. The first pshat is, now that I see that, what do you call the fact that I killed that Mitzri, the Egyptian, I see it's known, I see they know it, so they're going to rat on me to the Malchus, you know what I mean? They're going to go and they're going to snitch on me, so they're going to be malchut on me, a Moitzi Shemra, and now it's Shemra, Lashon Hara, and a Moichel, a Moitza rather. And therefore I've got to get out of here. But Rashi says another thing, another very good thing. What Moshe said was now I understand, now the thing is known. What is known? Now what is known is what I've always been curious about. I never could understand, why is it that Klal Yisrael is in such a golus of Mitzrayim? Why are they suffering at the hands of the Egyptians? What could they have done fundamentally that makes it so bad? So the Rebbeinu Shem said the following. You see, you are the Mashiach ben Yosef for that time, you see. Therefore, one of the functions of the Mashiach is to suffer for the Yidden at that time. That's one of the critical functions, you see. So what the Rebbeinu Shem said, the way you must suffer, Moshe Rabbeinu, is that you have to go into Golus. I'm going to force you to go away from Egypt. You've got to leave your father, your mother, your brother, the whole Shevet Levi, your whole Klal Yisrael, and you've got to go into Ethiopia, Kush, for 40 years. And then you've got to go into Midian for 20 years until you get to the burning bush, to the snare. And then he came back. He came back like 60 years later. For 60 years, whatever the story is, Moshe had to go into Golus, away from everything that he knew, among the wilderness of Goyim. You see? Moshe had to be served to Golus instead of Klal Yisrael, with Klal Yisrael, because he was the Mashiach of that time. The very reason why you're going to go into Golus will reveal to you, you see, the reason or the cause which will make you go into exile will be the very cause of why Jews are in exile in the first place, in Mitzrayim. You see, that's what Moshe said, Moshe saw the sinner. Here the guy comes over and he wants to protect one guy from the other, and that's what they say. They go and they want to be master on him. They want to Lashon Hara and so on. What Moshe clearly saw is the sinner that the Yidden have for each other, and the sinner in such a way where Jews in many cases will not hesitate, you see, to slowly damage other Jews, even sometimes to the point of destruction. That's what Moshe said, now I know why they have that Golus. You see. And the Jews have not learned their lesson, because it went on, and it continues each time, it continues on to the second Churban Beis HaMikdash, again with Sinas Chinam. And it goes on and on. The thing which is Mayrach the Golus, and which gives Esav the shvita of the constant Ritzicha and the constant, the physical oppression, is the fact that Jews among themselves are destructive. You see, they constitute their own internal destructive force. So this allows the Klipa to exercise a destructive element on them. You see, and this fundamentally is the main thing that keeps Klal Yisrael in Golus. In terms of that, so it is two things. It is the power of a chet itself, that's number one, which is enormous. If a chet has a possibility or the power to eliminate existence, you see, then in order to reacquire existence, you've got to remove that pagam, that tremendous hefsed that you lost because of what you did the chet, you see. That obviously has to be a tremendous, curative effect. So therefore, that explains why Yisurin is very great on a chet. Yisurin is very great on a chet because a chet has such powerful potential. But if the chet itself is a chet that comes from sinner, you see, that comes from mitzvah, which have profound effects on other people, and cause tremendous destruction and damage other people, then the yisurin that comes on a person becomes enormous, you see. And hence, you begin to deal with oppressions like pogroms or Holocaust, all these things, you see. And if you examine Jewish history, you'll find a very interesting thing, you see. And you'll find it in the annals of Jewish history and so on, is that even though the Jews are from, there are times when there's more learning. There could be a lot of times more learning, you see. There could be more mitzvahs in any particular generation. However, what always seems to be the same is that there always seems to be an aspect that in the community of Jews, there's always a very high level of sinner. You see, there's always cliques and there's classes, in that kind of sense, where people put down other people, where they see Lashon Hara on other people, or Moiti Shemo, or they cheat other people. In all these kind of sense, you see, where rich men look and temptuous down on poor people, you see, where people run after honor and covet. You see, all these things have to do with Ben Adam L'Chaveroi, Ben Adam L'Adam, you see. And there always seems to be this thing, where people won't hesitate to be marshal other people for their own covet and for their own honor. Where it's more important that a person gets his own self-esteem, you see, or his own honor, than worry about the welfare of another Yid. You see what I'm saying? And these are all Ben Adam L'Adam. And this is constant. In all communities of Klal Yisrael, you would always find these constant divisions, and constant fighting, and constant mechomas and so on. That's what keeps Klal Yisrael in Golus. It's the gaiva, it's the sinner. You see, it's not the taiva. It's not, because taiva is fundamentally an Indian Ben Adam L'Makom. You see, if a guy goes into a restaurant and eats straight for food, you see, he damages his neshama in terms of relation to Bnei Shalom. When a guy says Lashon Hara on someone else, then he's damaging far more than that. This is what gives the koyach to Esav, the enormous kittering that they sit to Acharon, and he has a powerful kittering, and this drives the din furious, as you can understand. You know? Imagine because of certain deeds that you did, you put someone else out of business, or you destroyed his family life, or you destroyed his shalom bias, or you brought a certain agony in his own being. You know what I mean? You will mitzvah the person, that your mama's brought a certain agony in the person itself, because you will mavayish him, or whatever the story is. This agony is great, and this agony goes up to the Shemayim, you see, and it creates a din which is furious in that sense. And that fury comes back down on a tremendous klipa, where the Ummah Olam then have a shlita, biyad, you see, to take back the destruction that they did. You see what I'm saying? That's the power of this of this kind of thing. This then tells us constructively what we can do. When we say last week that we're nearing the end, you see, and we're trying to lift off the klippas of Esav, the klippas of the Erev, and all the klippas that we see and so on, fundamentally, a Yid, fundamentally, the only tikkun that Yidden have to bring the Geula is really the following. If you want to know what you can do as an individual to bring the Geula, I'll tell you what you can do as an individual. It's not only to concentrate on mitzvahs ben Adam L'Makom, which is very critical, and to sit and learn, which is very critical, but it is to concentrate on the midas ben Adam L'Adam, because this is where it's at. This is where the kippur feeds in the greatest way. Klal Yisrael cannot fight against the klippas or the Ummah Olam and so on. It can't. Because the power of the Ummah Olam against Klal Yisrael comes from the kippur. You see. So Klal Yisrael cannot turn on the arrow and fight, you see. It can only turn on the arrow if the only way Klal Yisrael can destroy the Ummah Olam is only one way. It cannot reverse the arrow and go against Ummah Olam. It can only do one thing. It has to block, you see, the movement or transfer of its urus to the sun into the Ummah Olam. You see what I'm saying? It's got to block it this way. Klal Yisrael cannot lift off the clip of the Erev directly, and they cannot lift off the shibud of Russia directly. The only thing that Klal Yisrael can do is the following: is by being an Elech Yid themselves, by watching Lashon Hara very carefully, by watching the midas where sin manifests itself, by continuously observing oneself in all these different aspects, to the degree that everyone can. What he does is, he begins to remove, you see, the discharge or the loss of urus to the Satan into the Ummah Olam in that sense. And the Ummah Olam becomes shvacha. Then we said the other time, we said that there's a mitzvah that you have to destroy Amalek. Correct? Right? But yet you would say it's right that you have to destroy Amalek. The question that was asked is a mitzvah we have to destroy Amalek. Yet in Amalek remains our insurance policy. You see, remember we said that? Yeah. Because the existence of Amalek means that there will always be an ummah who will be lower than Klal Yisrael. So there will always be an ummah that will be able to give back the earth to Klal Yisrael. Remember we said that? So we said, why should therefore Klal Yisrael be given a mitzvah to destroy its own insurance policy? That was the question. The answer we gave is the following: It's not that they're supposed to destroy Amalek, but the ability to destroy Amalek depends on them. You see, Amalek represents the last place where the earth will be held. You see, when the Jews finally destroy Amalek completely, it means that there are no more earths which are extant, which are outside of Klal Yisrael. They have finally come back home, in that sense. But their ability to retrieve these last earths, or the ability to destroy Amalek, depends on if they're Elohim or not, you see.
You don't need for Amalek at that point.
You know, the fact they destroyed the need of Amalek to be there in the first place. You see. In other words, Klal Yisrael cannot fight against Amalek directly. It's supposed to kill an Amaleki. But its ability to fight against Amalek depends on its ability, how well they are themselves, on how much Kedusha, and how much mitzvahs they have themselves. The higher they are as Eden, the greater they are as Yiras Shamayim, the more Yiras Shamayim they have, right? Then the weaker Amalek gets. So maybe they can destroy Amalek, physically. You see. This fundamentally is the model that shows us how we have to go about removing the klippa and the shibud of all the Umas Olam on us. It's not to attack the Umas Olam directly, but it's taking away their power indirectly. How do we take it away? The Pasuk says it in the 5th day of the week, the Tilim, Lamatech Alagitim La'asaf. You know, Ayom Yom Chamish B'Shabbos, that the Levim would say. It says fundamentally, 96. Lu ami shomeali. If my nation would listen to me, Yisrael b'dvachai yalechu. If Klal Yisrael would go in my dvachim, they would follow the mitzvahs and so on. Kimat oyeveim achnia va'al tzoreim oshiv yodi. So the Buddhism says, I would then destroy the oyevim, the enemies. You see, and I would destroy it. So the question is, we see for that the true connection between Klal Yisrael and the Umas Olam, that the only one who could destroy the Shibudim or the clip of Klal Yisrael is the Banishim himself. The only way that we can convince the Banishim to do that is that we are zoichet to it by being certain levels of Yiras Shamayim. You see, but fundamentally it's the Banishim who's the agent of that kind of retribution, not us. The Banishim says, you want me to take away the Umas Olam? You want me to lift up this entire yoke? You want me to take you away from the Gullus? You want me to bring you back into the Gula? I will do it. I will do it for you because only I can do it for you. But I can only do it if you let me do it. How? If I can put away the kitruk. You see, if I can shut the Satan up. But I can't shut him up as long as you feed him. And the biggest way that you feed him, you see, is the destructive, pernicious, what we call effects that your chatoim have in sinner and ben adam lechavero. Yes.
Okay. So,
what is that? The Erev Father wants to come and destroy the Bria by taking away the Torah from Klal Yisrael? What, you love the guy? You know the interesting thing, that the Chofetz Chaim, the interesting thing, there was a time, it was a very interesting thing, that the Chofetz Chaim was a Haskalah. I know, someone once told me, this is an incredible thing. You know, the Chofetz Chaim was a murdik tzaddik and so on, but he was a big Hanoi, you see. But if you're very big Yeshamayim, you can understand in the Kanois. And that time there was a Haskalah, you know. So what the Chofetz Chaim wanted to do, he wanted to create an army of yeshiva guys, of Bnei Torah, and fight physically with the Maskilim, and kill them.
I read that he wanted to do that in terms of Russia.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
The last Jewish observer of this whole anniversary, he said that he regretted his whole life for
that he didn't
fight the Russians to the death almost.
Which the Russian government?
The Russian government.
Well, how he did it practically? Did he feel he could do it?
No, but he said
He
it's
said
holy numbers.
you have to have the emunah that you can do it in that sense. That
Well, he felt that,
you have to use every strength to combat it. He always regretted this.
Yeah.
There's a certain question there. It's holy numbers.
Yeah, I mean, the Rambam Mat.
Like with the
Boom,
Yaakov, the whole thing.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. It's right. But fundamentally, I don't know about the Russian. I didn't hear that. But what I knew was that he wanted to go against the Haskalah because the Erev Vav is Choyte Machtas Rabin. It's like a cancer. You see, when a person has cancer and there's a tumor growing in him and it's malignant, you see, the only thing you can do to save that person is get that tumor out, extirp it, surgically remove it, rip it out of the system. You can't sit there and negotiate with a tumor, you see, or compromise with a tumor. You can't do that. You got to get it out. The Erev and so on are this kind of thing. Of course, we can't do that. But the reason why we can't do that, the reason why we can't deal with the Erev, you see, is that Klal Yisrael does not have the koyach in terms of its own mitzvahs. If Klal Yisrael was in their own mitzvahs, if Yidden were Yiras Shamayim, you see, if there was Yiras Shamayim, a person would be afraid to do this to another person. He would be afraid to talk Lashon Hara. He would be afraid to be machav another person, or to be geyser from another person, and so on. Because he would have the Yiras Shamayim, even though he would want to do this, but he's most afraid of what the Bnei Shem told him. Then the Bnei Shem could raise up and destroy all these creepers. Which is what it says there. Kamat oyevei machnia. I would do the job. Because the only reason why they have Shlit over Klal Yisrael is only because of the fact, you see, of what you do. The whole thing begins and ends with the Eden. It begins and ends with the Yiras Shamayim of Eden, you see. A Yid doesn't have to do anything in the outside world, you see. What the Buddhism simply says is, you be a tzaddik. You observe the mitzvahs, ben adam l'mokum, ben adam l'chavero. I will take care of the rest. I will deal with your enemies, you see. The ability of the enemies to go against Klal Yisrael is only because Klal Yisrael goes down in their midas, in their Yiras Shamayim. You see, when Klal Yisrael goes up, the enemy goes down. It's Yaakov and Esav. Esav only becomes great, not because it goes great on its own terms, because Yaakov goes down. Yaakov is the one who has the lever. When Yaakov stays up, Esav goes down. When Yaakov goes down, Esav goes up. But Yaakov is the one who starts the motion. You see, the lever is in the hands of Yaakov, and that's what the Bnei Shem says. The power of Esav at any moment in time depends on where Yaakov is holding. You see, it's the same thing with the Erev Vav. And that's fundamentally what every Yid can do. If you want to know what you can do to bring the Gula, I'll tell you what you can do. Sit down and try and study the mitzvahs that have to do with Ben Adam Lechavero. Make a seder in what do you call it, in Shmiras HaLashon. You see what I'm saying? Begin to examine the whole concept of Sinas Chinam, and so on. And all these various aspects. And as you begin to grow in these kind of things, you slowly will be blocking off, you see, the avenue in which others are lost into the Umas Olam. And you'll be retrieving those things. That's the way you'll be Makav the Gula. Because that's the thing which kept Klal Yisrael in the Golus for so many years. We see that in the time of the Doha Flaga. We see the concept. We see it in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. We see it in the Churban Beis HaMikdash, you see. Has anything changed? Not really. Not in that sense. What? Another very good example, Talmidim Rabbi Akiva. 24,000 Talmidim died. They were the cream of Torah. Why did they die? Because they didn't respect each other. You see. No, there was a chasson in Yiras Shamayim over there. Each one was concerned with whatever he was concerned with. Maybe with his own covered, or his own situation. They weren't concerned with the emes of the stories, and they weren't noya covered to another Ben Torah. Or another Talmud Chacham, you see. So what happened? In the end, they were all wiped out. They were killed. You see. Why? Because that was Ben Adam Chavero. Who knows what went out? You see, you have to say, it says, Shaloi Nogu Kovet Zebazeh. It doesn't say, Shahoya Soine Zebazeh. You see. It doesn't say that they hated one another. It simply says that they didn't give each other the proper amount of respect. You see. You know? So Madach, if they were all wiped out because they simply didn't respect one enough, could you imagine what would have happened if they would have hated each other? You see? And all the ensuing expressions that come out of hate? It would have been far worse. You see? And that's the Inyan. That's fundamental thing which brings Esav to his full force. And why you can have something like a Holocaust. You see? Because when a person treats other person contemptuously in that way, so what's the Midah? The Midah Connect Midah says, then they will treat you like dirt. If you're not noig and bein adam l'chaveru, and you treat someone else like garbage, then the din says you will be like garbage. You see. So in a sense, that's the thing that you saw at the Holocaust. It's not only the fact that Jews died, in that sense. You mean not the fact that they were killed, but they were killed in a way they were like garbage. You mean they didn't die in battle, they didn't die in war, they died like sheep to the slaughter. You know, and they died in totally contemptuous ways with a tremendous bizyanis. You see, what can bring a person to such bizayon? Only, you see, if in some way he's connected to having done this to other people as well. Now, Chas v'Shalom, I'm not judging on people in World War II that died. I have no idea what their din v'cheshbon is. I don't know if they did these things in this life or in other Gilgulim. You see, many of these people were Gilgulim of people that were in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. You see, or whatever the story is. Chas v'Shalom, that we will say on any specific Jew, there were many tzaddikim, and there were many vei elachim that also died. Because there are also what's called Hanukkah Yichud Cheshbonos. There were many people who have to die just to be korbanos for Klal Yisrael itself. You see, But there were many people who died in World War II that were kabbalas for themselves. You see, we cannot distinguish in these kind of things. But fundamentally, what I fundamentally believe, and what is the thing, that the only thing that can give case of the koyach of such an enormous power is Klal Yisrael itself through the same kind of deeds themselves. You see, that's what gives it to Esav. That, and in addition, the enormous power of a chet. You see, the power of a chet itself is so enormous that it requires a tremendous amount of yesura just to be mamarikit, to erase it. You see what I'm saying? Because of the power of the thing. So combine that power and combine the quality of the chet itself in terms of its destructive to other people. You combine the two of that, and you're in deep trouble. That, I believe, is where it is. I think that's what basically is really what's going on. It's a combination of these two qualities. The potential of a chet itself, and what would be required to remove a chet, because the enormous power that it has, and the chet of sinas chinam, and ben adam lechavero with lashon and so on, and all these different guys that come out, that have an equality that is destructive to many, many, many people, over many years at a time, you see, and it causes untold agonies. The retribution of that is enormous. And that's basically it.
With this year, we end the entire series of Yisrael and the Ummah Olam, the relationship between the Jews and the Goyim in human history itself.